Youngpreneurs Podcast, a bonus episode. What's up, world? Another day, another podcast, and today I'm bringing you a cheeky little bonus episode to give you a bit of a taste of something that I've been working on for the last few months. It is a new book that I've created called the Authority Handbook, and it's going to teach you the secrets on how to interview influencers to take you from being unknown to absolute authorities in whatever industry or niche you're in. It's the same things that I have used to connect with some of the amazing guests like Grant Cardone that we've got coming on the show, Brett Campbell, Nathan Chan, all of these great influencers, and how I have managed to go from being a physiotherapist and not knowing any of these people or being known in the entrepreneurial space at all to interviewing them and boosting my own authority and credibility. So I really hope you enjoy. Please check out passiveincomeyoung.com/bonus episode where you can pick up the link to go and grab this book. It's just come out and it is racing up the charts. If you want to go straight to Amazon, you can pick it up there, the Kindle version. Just search my name, Victor Ahipeni, that's Ahipene, or you can search the Authority Handbook, and hopefully you can find it. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are. Get in touch with me, and I've created an amazing group that I'm going to be mentoring people through. For anybody who buys the book, there is a link inside, so I hope to see you all in there. Please grab my book if you've enjoyed the podcast episode. At the moment, if you're listening to this just after launch, we are launching it for 99 cents. So for $1, you can get a book. It's got a ton of value in it, and hopefully give a little back to the show. That's all I ask. All right, guys. Check it out, passiveincomeyoung.com, or on Amazon, The Authority Handbook.
You're listening to the Youngpreneurs Podcast, the #1 resource online for under 35-year-olds, where we chat twice a week to the most inspiring entrepreneurs in the world. We have it all. If you're looking for inspiration, guidance, or actionable tips to help you transition from that job into a business, or if you're ready to take that business to a whole new level, then this is the place to be. Get ready to live life on your own terms.
The Authority Handbook, Chapter 1, The Journey. The past doesn't equal the future. All great leaders, all people who have achieved in any area of life, know the power of continuously pursuing their vision, even if all the details of how to achieve it aren't yet available. Tony Robbins. I want to take you back to April 2014. I was a physiotherapist grinding away in a 9-to-5, knowing I was destined for more. It can often be a daunting place to be, and I'm sure many of you can relate. Reading books like The 4-Hour Workweek, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and Think and Grow Rich started an entrepreneurial itch that needed to be scratched. The next thing I knew, I was sucked deep into the rabbit hole of personal development. There is one thing that gets in the way of having massive aspirations to have as big of impact as these authors of these books. It's not having a plan to make it happen. What was even more daunting was when I realized that some of these big influencers had the same pull and reach as some well-known media agencies. I knew one thing that had proved true to me, however, in my whole life, whether it be sport, schooling, or anything else I'd pursued, that the fastest way from where I was to where I wanted to be was to find those who had already done it and model it off them. This meant I needed to be associating with people on the same journey as me, but further along. As the saying goes, success leaves clues and also creates shortcuts, and this is what I needed in a big way. The biggest problem, as I saw it, or the story I kept telling myself, was that big players and influencers were so far out of touch that I thought it would be impossible to reach them, and also impossible to emulate them. I had this preconceived idea that somehow they had an unfair advantage, that they were gifted something or had a stroke of luck, and all of a sudden they were well known and creating an impact. I thought, they must have some sort of specific training I hadn't or couldn't get to be where they are. It wasn't until a mentor of mine broke it down for me. This gentleman is without a doubt the biggest influence on my entrepreneurial journey. He told me the story of when he worked as an accountant. He was in a similar position to what I was, that feeling of being unsatisfied and wanting to live a different life. He wasn't bad at his job, far from it. But just because you are good at it doesn't mean you enjoy it, or that it's the best way for you to have that massive impact on the world. Nothing was spoon-fed to him, but it didn't stop him and his business partner from going from 0 to over 350 properties in 3.5 years. During this time, he was able to transition out of his job and start following things he was passionate about and that made a real impact. He spoke to me about the people he met, the same ones that I put on a pedestal, and they all had a very similar story. He also introduced me to a saying that I now hear and use often. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend your most time with. This initially made me feel uncomfortable, as I thought it meant I had to get rid of my friends to fit my newly found ambitions and aspirations. He could see this feeling I was going through and said, "Do you see elite athletes hanging around couch potatoes? How about top musicians and music artists spending their time honing their crafts at karaoke bars? Of course you don't, and you shouldn't, and the same shouldn't happen with entrepreneurship and business," he went on to explain. This is when a light bulb went off, or an aha moment as he called it. I knew I had to surround myself with more young, successful entrepreneurs. I needed to learn, model, and implement what set them apart from the masses. Although this doesn't sound like much, this started a whirlwind adventure and what some would call an obsession. I dived into learning as much as I could on different aspects of entrepreneurship. And as I did this, I knew others would also be interested in a lot of this as well. I was in a position where my knowledge had increased significantly, but I was still an unproven entrepreneur, working as a physiotherapist, trying to join the ranks of entrepreneurship myself and separate myself from that physiotherapy space. I knew what I had learnt was powerful. I also knew that if I had been taught this earlier, it would have put me on a completely different journey. I had a pretty strong hunch that others would be in the same position, so I started putting in time and effort towards this niche. Why? Because I wanted to become an authority in the young entrepreneur space and to be able to facilitate a space that I could teach and nurture the next generation of school children and show them the fundamentals of entrepreneurship and business. To introduce to them a different potential path outside of getting a job, doing a trade, or studying at university. To do this and have the impact that I intended, I needed to have a voice, and that voice needed to be recognized. This floated around in my head for several months. The solution actually got presented to me much earlier, but I was too stubborn to see it. You see, my girlfriend introduced me to this cool new thing that she found to fill the time while she was out running, called podcasts. I dismissed it at first as she was listening to podcasts about physiotherapy, which, as I previously mentioned, was no longer really my cup of tea. It wasn't until a few months later that I found out what a podcast was. I was hooked and amazed. Here was this amazing platform with tons of people I'd never heard of. Tons of people I'd never heard of interviewing amazing people with world-class knowledge. What was even more impressive was that what this did for the host. It quickly turned them in my eyes into someone I termed a micro-celebrity in their niche. They had garnished a following and had raving loyal fans. Many had built a business and other opportunities off the back of it, and had the chance to make an impact like they would never have been able to in years gone by. It actually reignited a passion from high school. I was fortunate enough to attend public speaking classes and later complete written exams towards a public speaking diploma. It was something I really enjoyed. Yeah, I know. Who really likes public speaking, right? When I decided in my last year of school, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I was torn between becoming a physiotherapist and going to broadcasting school. For a variety of reasons, I went down the physiotherapy route, but I thought that podcasting was like a second chance to follow that passion. If you're thinking of creating a podcast, don't be put off. Public speaking helped me, but it was only one component of the success that I've achieved thus far. You will see throughout this book and understand what other things I've implemented. This is where the idea of the Youngpreneurs podcast came about. My thought process was such that if I could pull it off, it was an opportunity to network with the most inspiring young entrepreneurs on the planet, to not only inspire the masses looking for a different path in life, but also a chance to change the 5 people I spend my most time around and learn and ask them questions to benefit myself in the process. I became obsessed. I started studying everybody who was anyone in the podcasting world. I looked at what they did, how they created and marketed their shows, what style they used, and everything else you could possibly imagine. It took me a period of time, probably a bit longer than I should have, but in the end, I launched my show. The results completely blew me out of the water. The strategy I created and used took my show to number 1 in new and noteworthy on iTunes in 6 different countries across 3 different categories: business, education, and technology. I thought I knew what opportunities I would get out of creating a podcast, but in retrospect, I had no idea the doors it would eventually open. In the following months, I was featured in media, spoke at online summits as the go-to podcast expert, and spoke at different live events, both locally and internationally. Fancy that, a physio turned podcaster. That wasn't the end though. Many of my guests saw the same opportunity I did, but didn't have the time or knowledge to make it happen. So that started my first online consulting business, where I helped my guests create their own shows. They started getting the same, and quite often, due to the size of their following, better results than what I had got. And I was completely floored when one of them messaged me saying that he'd made $13,000 after his first 3 episodes. All of them kept telling me that I needed to turn it into an online coaching program so I could leverage my time and reach and help more people. This is where the Podcast Institute was created. The first of my online ventures, aiming to teach people the systems and marketing to boost their authority, connect them with the influencers, and get a flood of new leads wanting to work with them. Since creating the Podcast Institute, it has also sparked the creation of a public speaking training for adults, online marketing for health professionals, and personal branding for experts. What I want you to take out of this is that looking at you and I, there isn't much difference. Working 9 to 5 with dreams of something more. No magic abilities, nothing handed to me on a silver platter, and just a passion to give back to others. I hope in the pages that follow, you get the inspiration to start crafting your own story, building your own brand that follows you to live your life on your own terms. That concludes chapter 1, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. It's taken me a long time. I'd love your feedback on it. I really hope that you can jump over to Amazon, grab the Authority Handbook, and if you want the other links, it'll be at passiveincomeyoung.com. This is not so much a story of my life, even though the first chapter is a bit about me. This is very much a how-to book with detailed steps on how you can go from unknown to authority in your own niche. So I look forward to catching up with you all soon on our next interview episode. In the meantime, guys, as I always say, keep living life on your own terms.
Thanks for listening to the Youngpreneurs podcast. This was proudly brought to you by the Podcast Institute, the number 1 training resource to take your business from chasing leads to leads chasing you, and from an absolute amateur to a full-blown authority. If you're looking to take your business to the next level, then a podcast is the obvious answer. You can get national and global exposure in a very fast time, and it's just exactly what I've done with this podcast. So if you want to find out more, get a checklist on how you can get started for under $60, and to find out more through a small training video that I've prepared for you all, then please check out passiveincomeyoung.com/podcast training.